Hi, this is Jamie Austin with Real Estate of Mind. Real simple, real investments, and real answers. Have no fear. Jamie Austin here to make the American dream a reality for you. Thanks for tuning in for the second show. This show this week is going to be about flipping. To flip or not to flip? That is the question. So before we get started, a little bit about my background. The reason why I got into this podcast, why now? People have been asking me that. What was interesting is last week we had the Mana Financial ladies in, and they were talking about helping women get empowered about finances. It's sort of the same thing that I run into on a daily basis with some of my clients. I had women with very important jobs that were afraid to make the jump into real estate. So I kind of wanted to take that fear element out of the equation and show them that they too can be homeowners anywhere, Los Angeles, New York, anywhere in between. So that's the whole idea of the show, is to actually give you information about real estate that you might just happen to use and then decide that you can actually be a homeowner yourself. So now let's go to the idea of to flip or not to flip. I get that question a lot. So I think to start off, it's very important to know exactly what that means. Flipping properties means that you're starting a business, basically an entrepreneurial business of deciding to flip a home, which means buying a sort of a deteriorated home, adding some improvements, and then putting it back on the market as quickly as possible for a profit. People don't do that without a profit. Sometimes you do, but that's usually because there's been miscalculations along the way. So I get questions like, should I even begin to flip? What do I need to do if I wanted to start to know how to flip a home? And it's a really good question because I think that there's some basics that you have to start with. Basically, first one is assess your skill level. Do you even know what flipping? Have you ever done it before? It's questions like that. If you're brand new to flipping and don't know a thing about it, then the next thing is get a pulse on the real estate market that you want to invest in. So for instance, if you've never flipped before, it doesn't mean that you can't spend your Saturdays and Sundays at open houses and getting to know the market with which you are potentially wanting to do a flip. So usually that can mean checking out neighborhoods that you're not necessarily going to want to live in, but it might be little pockets of the city that is up and coming. Usually maybe pockets around a university. Like in Los Angeles, we have USC, we have UCLA. The real estate around UCLA tends to be a little pricey, but around USC, there's actually some really good deals. So it's interesting to kind of get to familiarize yourself with the real estate market, right? The next level is to research the applicable state, county, and city taxes that you are going to have to pay when you purchase this property. So you have to understand that it's a larger and a broader scheme. And what it is you want to know every kind of expense, and whatever you plan for and budget for, double it. That's what we usually find, is that people don't budget enough. They go over budget, or something takes a lot longer than they thought it would. And that, of course, translates into more money out of your pocket. So you want to stick to a really, really tight budget if you can. Then you want to evaluate your finances. All of this is precursor to you even putting an offer on a property and moving forward with it. So once you evaluate your personal finance, meaning what is your credit score? How much can you afford? What do you have in savings to put down on a property? Or are you leveraging yourself with partners that may have the money with you on purchasing a property? So there is a really fantastic resource if you're just beginning to flip, and it is the REI Club, which is basically the realestateinvestmentclub.com. It is a fantastic website. Plug in a site, plug in your state. It'll let you know exactly where they have meetups about investing. So it's a really cool tool to use. And if you haven't ever done it before, go check it out. So a lot of people in Los Angeles, it's always that, where can I get the best deal, right? And Los Angeles is a huge city. So a lot of things that I try to steer clients into are areas that are up and coming. Maybe they aren't maxed out, or people haven't really known about them. And so I try to guide them, first of all, go drive some of these areas. Some of these areas that I know about years ago used to be like Washington, it used to be Mount Washington was a little area where you could get a home for about $150,000. Since 15 years later, now homes are about 1 million up there, but it used to be a little tucked away little neighborhood that people didn't know about. Eagle Rock was another one. Right now, I think the trend, if you're going to stay west of the Santa Monica mountain range, the trend is going south and east. So there are some deals to be picked up on the southeast side of downtown Los Angeles. Not an area that a lot of people are familiar with. But then again, I always say, if you're not familiar, go drive around. That's going to be part of your homework, is getting to know the areas that you want to invest in. So that's one aspect of just getting prepped for it. Now the 4 steps to actually beginning to flip a property. First step, make a business plan. No ifs, ands, or buts. You cannot work without one. There is not a single successful business that starts a business without a business plan. So if you don't know how to do that, take a local class. There's plenty of free classes and online information. There's a great website called Fundera. I believe that's the name of it. And it's a fantastic website that will give you lots of tips on like financing, best credit card rates, all that good stuff. Because that's what you want to start with, is a business plan and knowing your finances. Number 2, start with whom you know. If you're not a real estate agent, if you've never done this before, find a good real estate agent. We kind of have some good tips, and chances are we can probably steer you in some good directions, or somebody that's flipped before. So I would say try to kind of look in your back pocket, in your sphere of influence, and find out who you know could help you make this process a lot easier. It's like you're not going to start running you have to learn how to walk before you can run, right? So the goal would be then to meet up with somebody and learn what they know. Ask a lot of questions, prepare a lot of questions, and then assemble a team. So a team for flipping can be kind of the tricky part sometimes, but you want business partners or investors, or it's just you, which is fine. Realtors or property owners could also be very instrumental in getting you a flipped home. And then you want contractors and craftspeople. Who are the people you're going to contact to actually make those improvements? And therein sometimes lies the rub, because sometimes contractors, I've worked with many, sometimes they're fantastic, and sometimes not so much. So it can be a really tricky situation. But what you want is a team that eventually you assemble, that down the road when you're buying 1 more, 2 more, 3 more properties, that this becomes like old hat. So you're a pro at it by now, and you've got your team assembled. And then legal counsel. Believe it or not, you want some good real estate attorney advice, just basically on, anything that could happen, like if you're getting tenants out, a tricky situation like that. You want to make sure you are armed with information and good legal advice, because it makes all the difference in the world. It's always the unicorn, and it's always, I get, what's the best deal? Where are the best areas? Where can I make the most money? Where is the best potential for flips? Great question. Not always the same answer for everybody. But what I will say is if you literally take the time to drive around Los Angeles, you will start to see neighborhoods that you never knew existed. Most people are on such a routine that they'll pass by the same buildings day after day, year after year, and they won't even understand that just 2 miles east, west, north, or south could be a neighborhood that can actually give you a potential for a flip. So areas around Los Angeles, right? So if you're just starting out and you don't know the first thing about flipping, again, first thing I would do is I would drive the area. Check out Los Angeles, and don't check out the neighborhoods you know are already well established. Beverly Hills, Bel Air, Santa Monica, Sherman Oaks, Studio City, all of those guys they're expensive properties there for a reason. They are tried and true. That's not where you're going to find the deals. If you're on the valley side, you might want to check out West Van Nuys or even Pacoima, which is going to be very, very far north, almost right to the 118. So there's some areas along there that are kind of parallel all the way from like Woodland Hills all the way back to Sun Valley. And if you look at it, you can even kind of grid it out on Los Angeles. But those would be some areas. The further out you are from the main cities, like Valley Side, the Sherman Oaks, the Studio City, if you go due north, that's where you're probably going to find better deals. Due north, right? And then on the west side of the Santa Monica Mountains, anything close to the hills and further south. So then you have to travel south. You can't really go too far west from the 405 because then you're in water. That's the beach. So if you're looking for a deal, my advice would be to travel southeast. Southeast, how far? Well, you have USC, which is over there by the 110, and downtown Los Angeles. Downtown Los Angeles is kind of having a renaissance. They've been building a lot of condos downtown and trying to make that more of an urbanite area. Not necessarily that you'd want to do a flip in downtown because there's mostly buildings there. But what's interesting is all around there's warehouses and industrial and businesses that are moving in. Who knows? You can maybe find a commercial building that you want to flip, or you may find a space like an old duplex. There was a lot built in the 1920s around downtown. So what's interesting is to go find like some of those old duplexes, check them out, see how much they are. There's a very, very wide range of price ranges there. And then what's interesting is if it were me and I was like, where would I go to look for a duplex? I have a budget. I've kind of checked with my lender. I've done my homework. And let's say I've got a budget of maybe $600,000. And then when they come to me, can I get a duplex in Beverly Hills? The answer is no, not for $600,000. But for $600,000, if you go due south and east, it's a possibility. Lincoln Heights, area that anybody's heard of? Probably not. But it is one of those areas where it is potentially you could get a house for $600,000 or a duplex there. And again, south and southeast of Los Angeles. They've decided, again, what you'll find a normal trend is anything from the beach inwards is going to be expensive, less expensive the further away you get to the beach. The further away you are from the beach. And then the way LA is kind of divided up is the Santa Monica Mountains, the valley side, the west side. Anything from the mountains out, the further out you get from the mountains, the more potential values that there are for properties. So, you just kind of have to put your thinking cap on and go, yeah, well, if it's a really convenient area to live in, probably not a big profit margin there, right? But it could be interesting to just take a couple of days, maybe a weekend, and really drive the city of LA like you've never driven it before. And you will go, oh my God, I had no idea this place was here. Oh my God, this looks totally different. And of course it does. Because actually Los Angeles is what they call a megalopolis. Started off as a city and then it just kind of grew and grew and grew. So it's a bunch of cities right next door to each other. From the sky, if you're ever landing in LAX, you know what I mean. You can look out the plane and it's just never ending. But actually, there are like demarcations of certain cities, like very close, Culver City, Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, West LA, Marina Del Rey. And then on the valley side, you can have everywhere from Pasadena, all over. So it's really an interesting foray. I see the board is lighting up with callers. So let me take a caller so I can answer and see if I can guide this flipping process for you. Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to Real Estate of Mind. What can I help you with?
I have a question.
You have a question? Good.
I have a question about flipping. Yeah, I have a question about flipping houses.
Okay, great. Ask away.
Walk me through the process, please.
I'll walk you through the process. Okay, that's just what we were kind of doing. First of all, the process would be you'd want to start to know what you could afford. You want to get your finances in order to know exactly what you can afford. Then you want to speak with a lender. You want to get a lender on board so that you know whether you're having to do partners or whether you're going to be investing by yourself. The first thing I always recommend is you get a business plan because it's not easy to do this. You cannot do this without a business plan because a business plan will force you to put some structure to the idea of flipping. And that means budgets, timelines, all the things that are going to make a huge difference in whether your project is successful or not. So once you get a business plan together, then I would recommend you start looking in areas. I would hire a real estate. I'd try to work with a real estate, or if you want a real estate agent or broker. If you don't want to do that, start driving around areas that you think might be of value that you might want to invest in. And then start to make a list of properties that make sense to you. So what's your name?
Hannah.
Hannah. Welcome, Hannah. So Hannah, have you actually ever flipped a property before?
No, I haven't.
Do you have some money saved?
Yeah, I do.
Excellent. I love to hear that because it actually helps to have money saved if you want to do this project. You can leverage other people's money, but usually it's going to still take some of your own money. So that's great. What city do you live in?
Los Angeles.
Fantastic. So have you driven the wide berth of the Los Angeles city that it is?
I have. It's a lot.
It's a lot. You're exactly right. So I guess how does one take such a large city and then start to research areas that would be potentially really good flip areas? There's a lot of information that you can get online. There's a lot of realtor guest sites. We have our local MLS that you can get on. There's Redfin, there's Zillow. There's all kinds of sites that you can start to look at properties and kind of see what the differences are of something that looks done and something that looks undone or something that's dilapidated, right? I get a lot of people calling me saying, oh my gosh, we should definitely go for foreclosures, right? And foreclosures are not always the best deal. And it's interesting because they are bank owned, but banks have still done their research on the property and they're not in the business to give properties away, right? So in my opinion, it is sometimes better to find a home that might be a little run down, but with an actual seller. And the reason why I say this is because there's more negotiating power. When a bank owns it, there's a lot of things that go away. It's more like a buyer beware sale, right? But when you have an actual seller, you can actually say, hey, I discovered this about the property. Can we get a credit or can we work for you with this? And sellers are a lot more amenable, especially if they're wanting to get rid of a property. So are you looking at doing a single family or maybe an investment like a duplex or something else?
I'm not sure yet.
Not sure, just starting out the field, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Yeah. So what's your age range? Are you in your 20s, 30s? Yeah, are you in your 20s, 30s?
Yeah, I'm in my 20s.
20s. Oh, I love it. Young investors. I love that. It's kind of interesting. Some people don't think about doing this till later in life. And I love also that you're a lady looking to get into this because this is kind of interesting.
Yes.
Most people kind of stay out of it. They're a little hesitant. But I think you have to arm yourself with information, right? So once you have information, that's key. So getting to know areas, the things that you can do to help yourself drive LA, make your business plan, start to talk with contractors, start to talk with people that would help you bring your vision to flipping this house. So once you get a property that's, not in great condition, what actually are the things that you should spend the money on? Like, cosmetically, like should it be new flooring? Should it be, all kinds of, what do you choose? Which projects do you choose? Historically, that's interesting because NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, they actually have statistics on which things usually bring people the most. There's a satisfactory level, and then there's also what gives you the best return rate on your investment. Number one, kitchens. Kitchens tend to be the number one thing that bring value to your home, which is great. So doing a kitchen remodel or a kitchen renovation. So a kitchen renovation would cost, NAR kind of averages it out to be about $35K, but it's a 57% return on investment. And if you do, the next one would be a bathroom renovation. Bathroom renovations tend to get you an average cost of about $30, and they bring you 50% of the value recovered. Another one, which I find really interesting, the third one, which most people get the most value at, is putting in wood flooring. Now, you can say hardwood, it doesn't necessarily have to be that, but a wood or a really good type of, flooring. And it is a 91% value recovered from the project for putting in wood floors. Can you believe that? That's quite a high rate.
Crazy.
Crazy.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Thank you so much for all the helpful information. It was great.
You are so welcome. So make sure you put your business plan together, start driving Los Angeles, and start stocking money away. So if you have a little bit saved, keep saving. And you can make it a reality. I promise you that. Okay, all right. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.
You too. All right, bye-bye. We have the phone is lighting up again. Great. I love this. People call in. I love it. Yep, let's take another caller.
Hi. You actually answered so many of my questions with the last caller, but I do have a couple of more. I know you were mentioning, the MLS and Redfin, but it seems, is there any other way to find properties that can be flipped? Or like, who should I know that everyone else isn't using?
Oh, okay. That's a great question.
Reduce some competition.
First of all, before we go any further, I want to know your name. What's your name?
Oh, my name is Reiko.
Reiko, thank you for calling in today. So, Reiko, are you a local Los Angelian?
I am.
Oh, fantastic. All right. So, let me see if I understand your question. You're kind of wanting to know, like, Is there another way to flip, or is there who should I know to like help me with that? I just want to make sure I understand the question.
Right, to find these properties, because everyone can go on Redfin. Everyone,
Right.
like I want to be able to. I would love to be able to know how to find these, before everybody else. Of course, everyone wants.
Of
That's
course.
what everybody wants.
Right, exactly. First off, I would
how
have
do you go about researching?
Yeah. I would hire a good real estate agent, or like befriend one, that you can work with, because a lot of times they may have information about homes in their office that haven't hit the market yet. So always a really good real estate agent is always a good rule of thumb to have. But you can also look on sites online about auctions, real estate auctions. They have them. There's also even some that even happen on the court steps in good old downtown Los Angeles, if you can believe that or not. Probate sales usually require a court confirmation. So you might even want to call to see if their court are having any probate hearings downtown. It's an interesting process to watch on how that works too. So they would probably be properties that are not traditionally marketed, so you may be able to find a property there. Chances are they've already got an offer on it, but it might just be interesting to kind of check it out. So yes, there's definitely auction websites that you can look at. And then I think it would be sometimes if you find an area that you're really interested in flipping, I think taking on the whole city of Los Angeles is really too much for anybody, right? That's a big chunk to take off. But if you narrow it down to a couple of neighborhoods that you are potentially interested in flipping, I wouldn't even be opposed to like going and door knocking and seeing if there's any potential sellers there. That would be one way that the property's definitely not on the market because it doesn't have a sign in the yard, right? But sometimes areas, they're just people that have been there for so long that they might not even have thought about selling their home. But once they meet you, they might potentially have a conversation. You could start a dialogue with them if at any given time in the future, would they be interested in selling? And then you can kind of build relationships that way. So that's a way to get something that's not traditionally on the market and kind of get a head in. Of course, that could be kind of time consuming, right? Going door knocking, and I'm sure you have a job. Have you ever flipped before, or would this be a first time flip for you?
This would be my first time, but I have definitely heard some horror stories and of flips that have not gone so
right.
great.
Right.
And I know that people tend to. They want to, make it look pretty, but also save money.
Yeah.
What is, I guess, what do I want to avoid when I'm,
That's actually,
I want to make sure are structurally good.
Yeah. That's a great
pretty,
question.
But if it breaks as soon as, they're in there, then it's
Yeah.
no good for anybody.
Yeah, right. No, that's a really good question. First of all, for any buyer like yourself, so the first thing you would do if you got a property and you got your offer accepted, you would do what they call your due diligence, which is where you do inspections. So you'd basically have a general inspector check out the house and see if there's any seriously glaring issues, like, oh my God, the foundation is shot or the roof is shot. Hopefully what you're going to find, the goal of a flip would be for you to find a property that maybe needs more cosmetic and less structural or like plumbing or electrical, that needs less of that, because those can be really big ticket items. And so what you'd want to do, Reiko, is you'd basically want to find a home that like may need a little bit of TLC, but that you could basically spend money on doing cosmetics so that you could turn it around to the market. Things to avoid, which that was a really great question you asked. Things to avoid would be things like, I think, getting into a house where once you do your general inspection, that you find out, oh my God, this house needs everything. I think sometimes baby flippers, they think, it's no big deal, we'll take it on. And then what they don't realize is that all of their budget that they thought they were going to be spending in one way is now having to be spent in a totally different way, and it eats into what they could do cosmetically with the home. So the idea would be to take a sort of distressed home, but try to make it look as best as you can with the least amount of money and put it back on the market quickly, right? So the things to avoid,
Right.
I think, would be getting into a home that needs, when you discover it needs everything, I would say probably back away from that and maybe find a home that might need a little bit of updated plumbing, but doesn't need structural foundation, a new sewer line, all of that good stuff. And again, refer back to the budget that you have, because you're right. Anything can go wrong. And when you hear about nightmares about flipping, it's usually because they pull back some drywall, right? And then they discover, oh my God, there's black mold, or there's something's been growing, or the wiring has been cemented into the walls in a weird way. So they're going to have to redo a ton of stuff. So I think, you have to plan for those mistakes as well, right? So be very prepared, because you never know what you're going to find when you start taking down walls and refixing and refurbishing, right? So I would prepare for the worst. And what they always told me, when you make a budget, double it. So if you think you're going to get in, right? Because that makes a big difference to people's numbers. Yes, whatever you do, take the budget and then double it. And hopefully you don't have to use it all, but it's nice to know that you've planned for it. Does that make sense?
It does. Now, who is responsible for paying for the inspection?
Great question. You are. Buyers are generally, if you are dealing with a real seller and not a trust sale or a probate sale, the seller should disclose to you certain things that they know about the property. And that's what they do. They're called seller disclosures. However, the buyer's responsibility is to investigate any and all things about the property that they want to know. And they cannot limit to what the buyer can inspect. But normally, if you're just starting out, what I would do is I would recommend, if it's a single family home, I would recommend a general inspection and a sewer line inspection. Those would be top of the list. If it has a fireplace and you're planning on having a fireplace, if the home has it, then I would get a fireplace inspection too. So those would be the top 3 that I would definitely get to start. Maybe they might recommend more, maybe they might not. Does that make sense?
So it does. Now, I always want to be informed and stay realistic and manage my own expectations. And, I am definitely an HGTV addict.
I love it. So are most people.
They're always flipping this, and it seems like they're getting these projects done in like less than a month. Is that now? I know reality TV isn't always real, but is a month? What's a good timeline to allow?
That's a great question.
I want to know when I'm going to make my money back.
Exactly. And the quicker you can put a property back on means you get more of your return and means you get potentially more profit, right? And that's a great, thank you for pointing out that reality TV is not always real. I love it because it's so true. And I love, as a broker, people come into my office and they're like, oh my God, that house on $1 Million Listing, of course they sold it in 2 days. And I'm like, no, they didn't. Yeah, that's ridiculous. No, they didn't. That's not how it works.
$1 million.
Right, exactly. Everybody's got $1 million in their pocket, right? But of course, when you're talking about flipped properties, your profit margins are not as large. So therefore, your timeframes, and that was a great question, is really important, right? Because what a lot of people do when they're flipping properties is they use what they call a hard money loan. That means that you're getting money out for a shorter amount of time at a higher interest rate. So then that means you want to pay that puppy back as quickly as you can. Or a construction loan, sort of the same idea, right? You pay a higher interest, but it helps you get the cash flow to make the improvements that you need to make on the house. So you asked a really great question, Reiko. What is a kind of a realistic timeline? I would say if you were doing light cosmetic, just light cosmetic, you could probably do that within about a month, maybe even less, if it's simply like paint, flooring, stuff like that. Now, if you're going to upgrade, like electric or plumbing or a roof or something like that, of course, you're going to need to add time. So I would say probably, generally speaking about flipping, a realistic time frame is probably more like 3 to 4 months. And that depends on how large the project is and how much you have to do. But I would probably say you're going to want to wrap up that project within about 3 to 4 months. And if there is a really big snag in wrapping it up, reassess and really make what's important. It's like they do on the HGTV shows, like it's where they stop and they're like, oh, we didn't know that there was this horrible leak and now we have to replace all the flooring and that's going to take away from your new vanity you wanted in your master bedroom. So you have to kind of be able to reassess the situation, which also sometimes when we talk about assembling your team, get a really great team together, somebody that's able to troubleshoot for you and really help you through those things if you do discover something about the property that's going to be very costly and time consuming, and then revamp and then kind of readjust. So you got to be a little flexible with that. I hope I answered your question.
Okay. Absolutely.
Yay, well,
Absolutely.
Good. Fantastic, Reiko. And listen, happy flipping. And don't get flipped out about flipping.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks for calling in. Take care. We have been getting some really, really good callers call in about asking questions about flipping. To flip or not to flip? That is the question. I say don't be afraid of it, but just arm yourself with a lot of information. Just like almost every job that anybody has, information is power. So arm yourself with as much information up front that you possibly can. That's going to be the ticket to making this process a lot less daunting, believe me. Information, informing yourself about how much you can afford, what's your budget. Don't spend, even remember from the Mana Girls, don't spend more than you can afford. That tends to be a really tricky one for a lot of people, but it's absolutely crucial if you're trying to adhere to a budget and to a timeline frame, especially with flipping. So once you kind of have your finances in order and you've got your team assembled and you've found an area that you're going to be flipping in, then you get to start the exciting process of putting in offers on properties. And don't be surprised if your budget is a little on the lower side. Don't be surprised if you get some cranky, sellers or people that you're dealing with. Nothing's personal. You just want to make the place a better place. So hopefully by the time you're in escrow, you've got a method to the madness and you can have a successful flip. We had a caller call in not too long ago, and the question basically was, why would you even want to do a flip? What are the advantages of doing a flip? Most of the time, it's usually quick profit driven, meaning that, if you can spend just giggles, we'll say the house is $100,000, right? And it doesn't look great, but you knew that if you could spend $50,000, get it upgraded, make it look pretty, and that you could sell it for $200,000, then you're talking within 3 to 4 months, you've just made $50,000. That would be pretty appealing to a lot of people. I think the misnomer is, though, is you get in with that mindset that it's going to be quick, simple, and easy, and that's when the baby flippers flip out, literally flip out. They don't really understand what it takes, and you have to get maybe 1 or 2 under your belt. Then you start to get the lay of the land, and you start to get wiser about those choices, and you understand, yes, it's fantastic if I can make $50,000, but you know what? That next one, you might only walk away with 10. It's still 10, but how much then you break that down if you make 10,000 off of your energy, your time, your costs over a period of 3 months, that basically averages a little over $3,000 a month. Was it worth it to you energy-wise and stress-wise and whatever to do that? That's a question you have to ask yourself. I feel like people that really get into flipping, they're pretty passionate about real estate in general. They love it. They love the hunt. They love finding that dilapidated property. They love the art of negotiating the deal and getting a great deal on it. And then they love going forward and how can I make this house better? One of the first things that I walk into in a house, general trends in the market are everybody loves an open floor plan. Well, a lot of homes back in the 1950s and 20s, they didn't have open floor plans. The kitchen was segregated off to what they call a galley kitchen, and you were separated from your guests because nobody wanted to see you cooking. They just wanted you to come out with beautiful dishes prepared. It's a totally different market now. People want open air, they want indoor, outdoor space. So all of that, when you walk into an old home, you have to think, is that a load-bearing wall? What does that mean? Well, that means that's not going to be a wall that's going to be moved easily or inexpensively because it's part of what's keeping the house up. So when you start to take those design ideas and incorporate them into when you're looking at properties, you start to get kind of a feel of going into a property going, if I knocked out that wall, made that closet bigger, improved the bathroom, definitely redid the kitchen, I bet I could put this on the market for a lot of money. And that's when you're kind of hooked and you know that you're into flipping. It's almost like you can't help yourself walking into a property and going in there and seeing what it could be. And that's kind of the fun of it. So as long as you're okay with understanding it's usually not a success story every single time, you have to be realistic about the market. And the market is changing. So when you buy a property, for instance, this market is probably one of the weirdest markets we've had in so long. What could have got that extra $50,000 on an offer 3 months ago can't today. So you have to kind of be able to adjust yourself to the market, which is why hiring a real estate pro can usually really help make your world a lot better place. Because maybe you step out of the market for a couple of months and then get back into it. But the truth of the matter is there is always money to be had in real estate, period. Money to be had and made. And we're here to help you try to do that. Oh my goodness, this was a great show. Thank you guys for tuning in. You asked some really fantastic questions. You know what? Call me. I'm open. I'm open to whatever you want to make this show about. This show is actually for you guys. So I want to make sure that I'm answering the questions that make sense for you. So you can contact me anytime you want with real estate questions at jamie@thecityofangels.com. Because you know what? Real estate can be a little daunting. So I want to take that dauntingness out and make it fun for you. This is Jamie Austin, Real Estate of Mind. Real simple, real investments, real answers. Come back and tune in next week. We love having you.